So let's get into it. We're going to talk about how a single video, just one video posted online, completely spiraled. It turned into this huge national fight, pitting a state governor against the White House, and believe it or not, it led to a freeze on critical funding for the entire country. How on earth did that happen? Right. This is the big question we're tackling today. We're going to unpack exactly how an influencer's video from Minneapolis managed to trigger a real deal federal policy change that now affects all 50 states. It's a wild story about social media, politics, and honestly, the sheer power of a narrative. Okay, so it all kicks off right here. A conservative influencer named Nick Shirley posts the video on December 16th, 2025. And this single post is what lights the fuse on a massive political firestorm. And when I say it went viral, I mean viral. The reach was just staggering. On the social media platform X alone, we're talking over 116 million views. This wasn't some niche story bubbling under the surface. No, this was a full-blown phenomenon that landed right in the laps of policymakers in Washington, D.C. The claims in the video were really simple, and that's what made them so powerful. Shirley basically drives around to several daycares, films them from the outside, and says, look, these places are empty. They're just shells, and they're collecting government money meant for kids. The message was crystal clear and, designed to make people angry. Your taxpayer dollars are being stolen. But what was actually going on inside those buildings? Well, local news crews decided to go find out for themselves. And the story they uncovered looks a whole lot different from the one in that viral video. And this is where you see a major disconnect. The video claimed the ABC Learning Center was totally empty, right? But reporters from the local station, WCCO, they actually went there. And what did they find? The exact opposite. A totally functioning daycare with more than a dozen kids inside, learning language and math with their teachers. So the daycare director comes forward with their side of the story, and they've got security footage to back it up. They said, look, kids were dropped off in the morning way before Shirley's crew showed up around noon. And the staff felt really threatened by this group of strangers, some of them wearing masks, trying to get into an active daycare. So they just followed their safety protocols and didn't let them in. This right here is such a crucial point from one of the daycare operators, Umi Hassan. She, and a lot of others in Minnesota's big Somali American community, felt like they were being unfairly targeted, that the actions of a few were being used to punish everyone. This quote really captures the human cost of this whole controversy. Now, it almost didn't matter what the conflicting stories were on the ground in Minnesota. That video's massive reach prompted an immediate, and I mean immediate, and really severe reaction from the federal government. Just a few days after the video went viral, the Trump administration took this incredibly dramatic step. They just froze it all. All federal child care payments to the state of Minnesota were completely cut off. Just like that, the money spigot was turned off. And this wasn't some quiet memo either. This was the official announcement. The Deputy Secretary of Health and Human Services, Jim O'Neill, put it out there very plainly on social media. They believed the fraud allegations from the video were so serious, they had to shut down the entire flow of money while they investigated. And we're not talking about a small amount of cash here. This is huge. The Administration for Children and Families gives Minnesota $185 million in child care funds every year. That's money that helps support about 19,000 kids across the state. So, as you can probably imagine, an action this big, this drastic, immediately kicked off a massive political fight between Minnesota's state government and the administration down in Washington. Minnesota's Democratic Governor Tim Walz fired back right away. He basically framed the whole thing not as a legitimate response to fraud, but as a politically motivated attack. He said this was all part of a plan to hurt his state and defund social programs. But the administration didn't budge. They stood firm. O'Neill's statement paints their action as a totally necessary and responsible move to protect taxpayer money from what he called blatant and rampant fraud. So you've got these two completely different interpretations of the exact same event. Now, you might be wondering, why did the federal government react so incredibly fast? Well, to get that, we need to look at some history, because the allegations in this viral video, they didn't just pop up in a vacuum. So this timeline shows that worries about fraud in Minnesota's social programs, well, they aren't new. You can go back to 2015 and find schemes with fake check-ins at daycares. But the context that really set the stage for this whole thing was a massive case from just a couple of years earlier, in 2022. And that brings us to the Feeding Our Future scandal. I mean, this was a monster. A $250 million scheme, the biggest of its kind in the entire nation. With 78 people indicted, it put Minnesota on super high alert for this exact type of fraud, which is why the new allegations in Shirley's video felt so explosive. And it's precisely because of this very recent history of massive fraud that the federal response didn't just stop with Minnesota. No, it created this ripple effect that was felt all across the country.
So the Trump administration didn't just freeze funds for one state. They took this incident and used it to roll out a brand new, much stricter set of rules for how every single state gets its federal child care funding.
So what does this actually mean for the rest of the country? Well, it means a much, much higher bar for verification for everyone. And that second step is a really huge change. Payments now require justification, receipts, sometimes even photo evidence before any money gets released. And this really highlights a core tension, right? How do you prevent fraud without creating so much red tape that you slow down or block legitimate funds for families who desperately need them? And that really just leaves us with this final, big question. This entire saga, from a YouTuber's video to a nationwide policy change, it just shows the incredible power of social media to shape our political debates and actually drive government action, all in real time. It raises these fundamental questions about how we verify information in this digital age and how our policies should, or maybe shouldn't, be made in response to it.